Anna's got the first segment for you all.
All right, well, let's get right to it. Last week, Emma Vigeland and Sam Seder of the Majority Report thought it would be fun to put out a more than 18-minute long video chastising and mocking me for my willingness to admit that I was wrong, in part for downplaying the possibility of Donald Trump implementing Project 2025 upon winning the election.
People have admitted that they made a mistake.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. More news.
So I just want to address something. I was wrong about Project 2025. MAGA hates Project 2025, and I thought that Donald Trump actually cared about his base because in his first term, he seemed to be swayed by his base. He seemed to listen to his base.
Wait a second, wait. MAGA hates Project 2025?
Where's the evidence of that?
What? What is this MAGA that they speak of?
You know what? Sam is totally right. It is he who understands the MAGA base better than anyone else. I mean, the guy goes out of his way to engage in dialogue with Trump voters. He seeks to understand where their hearts and minds are at. Here he is touting his openness to understanding people who vote differently than he does.
We can't take the power back without talking to Trump voters and making them realize their mistake. Well, wait.
So let's pander to them first.
Pick your battles doesn't have anything to do with talking to Trump voters.
Yeah.
Or not.
Or flattering false
You've just
consciousness.
decided to make some weird connection there. Yeah. We can't take the power back without talking to Trump voters and making them realize their mistake. Actually, no, we can't. There's millions and millions of other people who need to be motivated to get into the fight.
Is that I am coming from the Poly Market Studios?
Insulting them and lumping them all together as the worst among them doesn't help either. I don't know when we have done that with all 78 million people, but I got news for you. The percentage of those who voted for Mitt Romney, they can suck my. I don't care about any of that. I don't care about any of that.
Astute analysis, there you have it. Sam Seder, noted expert on Trump voters who he won't talk to and has no interest in understanding. Got it. But it's worth asking why Trump would repeatedly deny supporting Project 2025 on the campaign trail. Was it to appeal to libs like Sam Seder? Or maybe it's because he knew his base doesn't support large swaths of the policy agenda laid out in the project's 900-page document. So to say that Trump is implementing Project 2025 isn't even fully accurate because, well, there's a lot that he doesn't agree with that's in that document and said that he won't actually pursue. After getting elected, he said these things. For example, Project 2025 wants to eliminate every single tax bracket and replace it with just two brackets, 15% for anyone making under $168,000 annually and 30% for those earning more than that. If this is the first time you're hearing about it, it's because Trump hasn't mentioned it and isn't likely to pursue it. And are we gonna pretend like Trump read a 900-page document? Really? He does, however, plan to extend his 2017 tax cuts for individual filers. Trump also wants to lower the corporate tax rate from 21% to 15%, which I've spoken out against repeatedly. Project 2025 also proposes cuts to Medicaid. What does Trump have to say about that?
Social Security won't be touched, other than if there's fraud or something, we're gonna find it's gonna be strengthened, but won't be touched. Medicare, Medicaid, none of that stuff is gonna be touched.
Nothing.
You don't have to. Now, if there are illegal migrants in the system, we're gonna get them out of the system and all of that fraud, but it's not gonna be touched.
I mean, well, look, touching Medicare or Medicaid, super unpopular. And maybe Trump is just saying that publicly while behind closed doors, he's telling Republicans who are currently working on a budget that they should totally slash Medicaid, right? Well, it turns out, no, wrong. That's not what's happening. Trump had previously weighed in privately against cutting too heavily into Medicaid, telling House Republicans at a closed door meeting earlier this month that he wants to be very careful with Medicaid. His public remarks on Hannity represented a broader and more forceful assertion of that red line. Nonetheless, Trump's agenda and Project 2025 do have a great deal of overlap, especially in regard to the dismantling of the administrative state, which his base actually does like. But how could anyone be in favor of scaling back on government agencies that are full to the brim with unelected career bureaucrats who get to create, judge, and enforce their own policies and rules? How could this be?
A scathing review of the CDC, finding the agency repeatedly botched its pandemic response and failed to meet the moment of crisis. The CDC long under fire for its guidance on masking and vaccines over the last 2 years.
This is really confusing.
There are more than 10,000 chemicals and additives allowed in food in the U.S., often in small amounts, but many have not been evaluated by the FDA in decades. The majority are safe, but some chemicals allowed here have been banned overseas after research has linked them to cancer and developmental or behavioral issues.
Is the food industry basically policing itself?
I would say yes. 45% of the FDA's overall budget now comes from the companies it's reviewing, and 65% of the FDA's budget specifically for human drug regulation comes directly from Big Pharma itself.
The historic $2 billion payout by the U.S. Department of Agriculture to black farmers and other farmers of color who experienced discrimination when applying to the USDA's farm loan programs.
The lender, who was a federal employee who was employed by a government, spat on me. I was called the N-word from this same official.
So I do a lot of work surrounding environmental justice issues here locally as far as activism goes. And I've done research fellow at the local EPA. The admin at the time when I was a research fellow were primarily comprised of people who were affiliated or directly coming from the Department of Defense. And they put in a lot of restrictions as to like what the researchers get to, which PFAS compound the researchers get to study.
Right.
Is the EPA turning a blind eye to these dangerous forever chemicals, and why?
Unfortunately, the EPA is not turning off the tap of these chemicals from the polluters who knew they were poisoning their workers in the 60s and their neighbors in the 70s and ultimately all of us. And they're continuing to allow these polluters to send their PFAS wastes not only into our rivers, but to our wastewater treatment plants, where then they are then sold to farmers who unknowingly contaminate their fields.
Whoopsies. Now, if you watch Beavis and Butthead on the Vanguard YouTube channel, which the Majority Report hilariously treats as some authoritative source, you'd think that TYT is totally in favor of the Trump administration gutting federal agencies. Except we're not. Two things can be true at the same time. These agencies have been deeply corrupted, do engage in waste, and should be reformed. But treating the federal workforce as if they're Twitter employees is a disastrous way to handle it, as we've been learning in recent weeks. But let's hear what Emma has to say about my on-air correction.
It is not the prediction. People make predictions all the time.
Right, I was wrong in my prediction about the election, but
yeah, right, some type of poly market bet here.
Yeah.
Where the outcome we can't tell.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was abundance amount of evidence of this. And even if your opinion, not prediction, opinion was, I can't see them doing this is pretty radical. The idea that you would mock people for believing it and saying it was a conspiracy theory. The people had Trump derangement syndrome. I'm sorry, give me a break.
Apologies, I forget that Sam usually doesn't let Emma get a word in edgewise, but I'll address what she said in that video in a second. But before I do, did I, Sam? Did I mock voters who were worried about Project 2025? Because I don't remember doing that. What I do recall is chastising Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party for offering nothing to voters other than incessant fear-mongering about Trump. I also remember criticizing members of the media who simply regurgitated anything the Democratic Party claimed. I also found it fascinating that as the whole of the Democratic Party was engaging in said fear-mongering, they were also playing part in a massive cover-up about Biden's mental decline. I mean, just think about it. Democracy is under threat. We, the Democrats, insist that this corpse stay in the race to give us the best chance of beating Trump and saving democracy. But since Emma brought it up, let's address the fact that inaccurate predictions are totally okay, but only when she's wrong. In the lead up to the presidential race, Emma declared that her final electoral college prediction is that Harris sweeps all 7 swing states and ekes out a victory in Iowa. My only reservation is that I don't want to jinx the results, but I'm trying to avoid the trappings of magical thinking. Well, Emma, the magical thinking is what led you to think that Harris would sweep all battleground states, not that you cited superstitious jinxing. And of course, Trump, not Harris, went on to win all swing states and the popular vote. The average of polls clearly showed Harris trailing Trump. She ran a horrific campaign, stood for nothing, was unpopular with anyone who was paying attention, and wasn't even nominated through a democratic process. She was anointed. How's that for saving democracy? But you worked very hard to launder her reputation and sell her to Americans. So much so that I thought maybe, just maybe, all those Kamala Harris ads that interrupted your YouTube videos were possibly clouding your judgment. But you say you were delusional all on your own. And you know what? I'll take your word for it. But since we're on the topic of issuing corrections, one of your viewers is curious about something that you've said and whether you're gonna correct it. One of your viewers wants to know that since I admitted I was wrong, can Majority Report admit they were wrong, saying there wasn't a Venezuelan gang that took over an apartment complex in Colorado, even though residents were coming out and saying that was going on for months? I haven't heard a peep from the Majority Report. Well, you know what? That's actually a great question. Majority Report seemed to direct their audience to harass me for months for accurately reporting that story. When that story was updated to include a horrific incident in which Tren de Aragua gang members literally kidnapped and tortured a couple that lived in that Aurora, Colorado apartment complex, Majority Report couldn't be bothered with it at all.
A Colorado apartment complex plagued by suspected Venezuelan gang activity in the spotlight again after a brutal kidnapping.
They were pistol whipped, they were beat, they were victimized, they were terrorized.
Police say on Monday night, more than a dozen people approached a man and a woman, forcing them into an empty apartment where they were held against their will, and the man was stabbed. The 2 victims were released by the assailants after they promised not to call police, authorities say. Police say 19 people were initially detained in connection to the attack. Tonight, 16 are in Immigration and Customs Enforcement custody, according to an ICE spokesperson who says they are all Venezuelan nationals in the country without authorization.
Prior to that, the Aurora Police Department had already arrested 10 Tren de Aragua gang members from the same building. Wow, take a look at that. That's a lot of mugshots for a Venezuelan gang that definitely does not exist and definitely were not victimizing other migrants in addition to low-income Americans in that same apartment complex. That totally didn't happen. Oh, but by the way, that's not all. Earlier this month, ABC News had this headline, quote, ICE carries out raid in Colorado, 100 members of Venezuelan gang targeted for arrests. Alleged members of Tren de Aragua were arrested at an Aurora apartment complex. So I'm just really curious, super curious. Is ABC News funded by Polymarket and that's why they're reporting these news stories? Are they making it up? I mean, it's just how many gang members do you need to take over a single apartment complex? But look, that's not all. Does Emma have the integrity to admit that she was wrong to gaslight everyone about Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass's austerity measures, namely her decision to cut the budget for a fire department that had already been chronically short-staffed and underfunded? She put this up on Twitter. Lots of people are spreading this $17 million fire budget cut story, and it's just not accurate. She then included a comical thread to bolster her claim. The thread made no sense, and it was clear that Emma didn't even bother to read the thread that she herself quote tweeted. She was even called out by other lefties like Sam Sachs, who correctly stated that Emma was sharing an incoherent thread she couldn't have possibly read. And then when told the actual facts, doubles down and accuses everyone of lying to help the right. She still hasn't deleted the post that was retweeted 5,000 times. I checked today, it's still up. And therein lies the heart of the issue with Majority Report. Anyone who has a thought or belief that deviates even slightly from their doctrine is just a right-winger. And right-wingers could never make any legitimate points, right? We must all worship the all sanctimonious Majority Report and their ideological dogma at all costs, even when there's evidence proving them wrong. Although I can't decide if people like Emma are really this cultish with their politics or if they're just terrified by their own audience.
DSA Josh, I live on the west side of LA. All the criticism that conservatives are directing towards Mayor Karen Bass is 100% motivated by white nationalism and violent misogyny. They're fascists, full stop.
Hey, DSA Josh, you're unhinged. And guess what? I'm elated that you watch Majority Report. They deserve you. As for TYT, we're gonna correct the record when we get something wrong. And I'm positive it will happen again in the future because we're human. And guess what? Humans make mistakes. Emma is also susceptible to making mistakes. And that would be totally fine if she showed a modicum of humility and corrected herself. Instead, she plays the role of hall monitor. She polices what one can say, what they should believe, who they can talk to, and what they can talk about. It sure is ironic for someone who claims to loathe cops so much. But that's the role she and others like her play in the left wing, and everyone's sick of it. We'll be right back.
All right, back on the social break. So I just wanted to throw in my 2 cents on all this fighting back and forth within the left. So guys, there's nothing wrong with disagreeing with policies. That happens all the time. It happens all the time on the TYT network. It happens on the Young Turks, etc. There's nothing wrong with disagreeing on strategies. I mean, we saw in the clip that Anna just did, Sam's strategy is do not talk to anyone who voted for Trump. How you would win them back without talking to them is a good open question, but I'm sure he's got a brilliant strategy of Vulcan mind meld. I don't know what it is. By the way, the establishment Democrats have a strategy too, which is do absolutely nothing. I don't think that's a good strategy either. Our strategy is, why don't we talk to all Americans, including Trump voters, who a lot of them are independents, and yes, there's some even MAGA populists, and maybe we can win them back if we have a conversation with them instead of yelling at them and calling them names. But hey, everybody pick your own strategies, no problem at all. If you say, no, I love yelling at them and I think that's gonna work, and the 12th time or the 88th time or the 100 billionth time that we yell at them, they're gonna break and vote Democrat. Okay, maybe, we say, have at it, Hoss, do that strategy. But the part that bothers me, guys, is when people make it personally. And so there's 2 tricks that they do. One is, if you disagree with me at all, you're right wing. And if you're right wing, you're immoral. Hence, if you disagree with me at all on anything, you're an immoral person. You're hurting vulnerable communities, you're hurting this, you're hurting that. Wait, how am I hurting them? The vulnerable communities in Oakland voted overwhelmingly with the position that Anna and I have. Why? Because the position we have represents the great majority of Democratic voters and voters on the left. So how are the vulnerable communities hurting vulnerable communities? Because they dared to disagree with Emma and Sam and others in that circle. That's absurd. It's patently absurd. But they make it seem like I am the only moral one, and then they go further. So in that clip that Anna just mentioned, they called her marble brains. What is that? I mean, this is what we're doing now. Another leftist said that my brain is broken. Okay, I mean, like, we could do that too, and we can say all of your brains are broken and etc. And we can keep going down this path, but I hate it. I want to be constructive. I want to actually win. I want to care about the voters and the average American instead of caring about your ego and saying that anybody who disagrees with you has marbles in their brain and they're stupid and evil and immoral and fascist, etc. That is the world's worst strategy, and by the way, not very moral. So look, guys, just fight for your policies, fight for your strategies, and I hope we all stop making it personal. I'm not seeing that lately, but look, on the Emma front, that one's sadder because We knew each other, we supported her for so long. So for all of a sudden to turn around on a small policy disagreement and say we're immoral, it's beyond the pale. We'll be back. I respect your honesty. Thank you for saying that, Anna, we appreciate it. And guys, always, two last things I'll tell you. Number one, look at people's track record. So, for example, a lot of the other left-wing shows said Kamala couldn't lose. She was going to win all the swing states. She was going to win beyond the swing states, etc. We said, watch out, Trump can win, and watch out for populism. Populism is coming, and we should be more populist, etc., etc., etc. I mean, I said back in 2013, Bernie could beat Hillary Clinton. We've got a track record that you could check out over and over again. We've told you whether it's right or wrong, meaning like on the strategy, on the policies, on what we want or not, what is actually going to happen, what is more likely to happen. And so you should care about things that turn out to be true, not the things that you want to hear, especially before an election, because that's going to lead you down a disastrous path if you're like, oh, we got it. I heard on all the left-wing shows, we don't even have to worry about it. We're going to win all the states. Well, that's not reality-based thinking, and that doesn't help. Last thing is, look, mocking corrections is particularly loathsome. So, for example, Emma got it wrong that she thought Kamala was going to win all the swing states and maybe Iowa. So what? She got it wrong. And then she comes out and says, hey, that was embarrassing. I got it wrong. No problem. I got no problem with that, right? Or you thought, hey, Biden was going, by the way, a lot of people thought Biden was FDR 2.0. And that the bills that he passed were so amazing that American people were going to love them, right? And then he was going to win easily. And then he was going to do almost all of his agenda. We thought that wasn't going to happen. And so, but if you thought he was going to do that, I don't hate you for it, right? And I'm not going to mock you if you say, oh, well, I thought he was going to do his agenda and it turns out he didn't. Oh my God, I love you for saying that, because truth matters. Okay, so I've said my piece. Anna, what's next?
All right, let's get to the news of the day, beginning with this.